Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the South Kingstown Planning Board. The date is Thursday, May 29th, 2025. The first item on our agenda is roll call. Susan Axelrod.
Here.
Liz Karp is absent. Peter DiStefano. Here. Joe Murphy.
Here.
Robin Pothier. Caper Wilson.
Here.
And Maria Mack is here. Our next agenda item is this consent agenda, which consists of approval from the April 8, 2025 work session, April 22nd, 2025 regular session, and the report of the administrative officer, which includes minor land developments, final plan approval, Perryville EMS facility, minor subdivision final plan approval, Hayes minor subdivision, final plan approval, Milton Woods minor subdivision, final plan approval, development plan review, People's Credit Union. If there are no additions or corrections, would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? Make sure your mic is on.
The April 8th minutes have me listed as absent by accident.
Okay.
That was the Zoom meeting, right, with Able City.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Noted. Any other additions or corrections? If none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Caper. Do we have a second? Second from Joe. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries. We have a request from staff for a minor change to the order of the meeting this evening. They would like to move up public hearing, major land development, combined conceptual and preliminary plan, South Kingstown High School first, followed by 571 Main Street, followed by Hampton Place, followed by 82 Main Street, followed by preliminary plan Fieldstone Farm. If someone would like to make the motion to adjust.
I'll make that motion to adjust the agenda.
We have a motion from Caper. Do we have a second? Second from Peter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Vote is unanimous. We'll move on to our new first agenda item. Public hearing, major land development, combined conceptual master plan and preliminary plan, South Kingstown High School. Is there anyone representing the applicant? Please come up to the mic and state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Luke Murray. I'm speaking in my capacity as a school building committee member. The design team is here, ready to present. I'm just going to give a brief introduction, then I'll turn it over to Phil Conte, who's our design lead, and the rest of the design team. So this project is the single largest public project investment in the town's history. And so while we understand that we're not special in terms of regulatory approvals, and we're subject to all the regulatory requirements, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this is a unique project in the amount of public engagement and the amount of interagency coordination that's occurred since the project inception, which will continue throughout this project, which is likely to run the duration of another 3 years. The 10-member school building committee was appointed by the town council on August 9th, 2022. And since that time, we've had a total of 66 meetings to date to discuss various aspects of this project. We expect another 60 to 80 more by the time this project is done. All of these meetings have been subject to OMA requirements, open to the public, have been live streamed and recorded. In addition, the SBC has conducted over a half dozen community input sessions to solicit design ideas, explain options, and address community concerns and answer project-related questions. This doesn't include our most recent community meeting, which was requested at the behest of this board. Our consulting team has worked hard to develop a design that meets the expectations of the school building committee, town administration, school administration, the Rhode Island Department of Education, the school committee, town council, planning board, the community, and most importantly, our educators and our students. We appreciate the continued input by the planning staff and the planning board and the community over the past few months, and have worked hard to respond to these concerns and incorporate suggestions where feasible. Tonight, our team will review updated site plans, walk you through design adjustments, and address questions that you may have. Our ask tonight is for the board to consider preliminary plan adoption with any specific conditions or waivers as necessary to authorize final plan approval by the administrative officer to help us keep this important public project on schedule and on budget for the benefit of the South Kingstown community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Phil Conte.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Philip Conte with Studio Jade. I will briefly introduce the rest of the consultants here that may be answering questions for you this evening. Brian Morgan, landscape architect; Kate Turner, owner project manager; Paul Bannon, traffic engineer; Sam Hemingway, site civil engineer. And I think that's all we have here this evening. So we know you have a long agenda, so I want to quickly go through a presentation, but you may see images here that may help you with answering questions, and then we can easily respond to them. But we do want to make sure you know that we have developed the project in accordance with some of the comments we heard from the TRC, public input, etc. We do have the technical drawings in this slide deck if we need to reference them, but certainly I think some of the images that you'll see will prompt those discussions on drainage and landscaping and traffic. We'll finish the presentation with a quick slide on site management and what the community and you all can expect to see when they start construction. And then, of course, solicit feedback during the public comment. I think it's important that we just touch on a couple things that we did already follow through with, which was to eliminate parking on that student lot connector road, realigning some of the parent entrances and pickup and drop-off areas along with entrances to the site based on abutter concerns and to avoid negative impacts on the project. We did adjust the perimeter grading to ensure that existing vegetation, good vegetation that can remain along the property line. We did extend fencing around the perimeter, that you'll see that in some images. We refined the mechanical and electrical yards with screening. We relocated the dumpster enclosure from the property line. There's a minor detail, but a comment that was brought up to us that we were able to accommodate. We enhanced our landscaping features. I still think there may be a couple items to add to that. We did improve pedestrian safety and parent drop-off, which we will show in one of our renderings. We did enlarge the temporary stormwater management because there will be a period of time where you will have the new building and the existing building both on the same site. So we wanted to make sure we could manage as much stormwater as possible. We did conduct a traffic analysis, and Paul can speak to that. And we did investigate student parking on site. It's important to keep in mind that there will be a period of time, likely school year 2027, 2028, where student parking will either be non-existent on site or very limited. Now, this is a managed site, so there is some administrative components to it. We do have some opportunities, which I'll share with you in the presentation. We are excited to be sharing the project with the community on June 5th, where we will be talking about the overall building design, but we will also take that opportunity to continually remind them of the approaches we've taken to be good neighbors regarding landscaping, screening, lighting, etc. We think it'll be important to share the traffic patterns, both temporary and permanent, address noise, how we're going to handle laydown, contractor parking and equipment so the neighbors know what to expect, explain to them any technical things that come out of this meeting, and present the existing condition survey, which is an important component to this for the neighbors, so they understand the process of making sure we know what exists before we start construction on their site at their particular property. We'll take the opportunity again to share with them graphically, you have seen these before, what the community can expect, how we'll manage dust, how we'll manage headlights, etc. This was just a part of our abutters meeting, but we do want to share it with the entire community during our information sharing session. Some of the community may not be familiar with some of the stormwater management practices and what that'll look like, so we want to show them examples. We also want to remind the school department that there is a maintenance component to them relatively low bar that should be able to be maintained in terms of taking out trash that may pile up. Reminding them that if they ever see water in there, it is likely after a large event and it does dissipate. This happens to be a project we did last year in Portsmouth. So before I get into the renderings, just want to provide this aerial image to orient everybody with the existing site. Existing high school is in the top left, the open field bottom right. New construction will go in open field, and the open field will go where the existing school is once it's demolished. This is just a context plan. If we need to come back to it, we will. But I quickly wanted to get into some of the renderings that may help us with questions and answers. This is the overall site. We purposefully washed out the new school and the hazard building because we don't want to distract. We want to focus in on the site and the planning components here. I'd like you to orient yourself with School Street along the top right, Columbia Street. We did identify some entrances as west entrance, east entrance, south entrance. That will be important in some of the other images. One thing in particular on this slide that I'd like you to recognize is that at the open fields, you'll see where we have walking track as an alternate. Depending upon the budget, that may be part of this project. The yellow part of that walking track onto the left is part of the project so that we have safe passage for students from the community onto the property. You'll also see that we have new and existing landscaping with new fence starting over by the east entrance and going to Columbia Street north entrance, which is slightly off the bottom of this page. This white dotted line that you see going across the image is a section we cut. In the next slide, you will see that. There was some question about what's the grading look like across the open fields and how does it interact with that student access road and Columbia Street and the stormwater management practices. Now, we certainly can go back and forth in these slides, so please feel free to let me know if we want to do that. The top is an image from Columbia Street north entrance. That is the access to the student parking lot. It is flanked by stormwater management practices on either side. The buildings are in the background. The landscaping here does show a rather mature set of landscaping, probably like 10 years from now. We know they won't be this big when they're planted, but we wanted to at least fall in love with the images. How about that? So the bottom is a section cut through the site at that white line. To the left is our property line. We're at elevation 48, and across the open fields, we slope down to about elevation 44. That student parking lot access road is elevation 38. The stormwater management is at 32, and then it climbs back up to elevation 37 at Columbia Street. I can come back to this image. This one may help as well. This is...
Sorry, Phil, can you put it on presentation mode?
So when I did that, it wouldn't find it when I did window through airtime. I
Okay.
tried earlier when I was here.
All right.
I'm happy to send this presentation out, but you see that we have a 5-to-1 slope between that between that access drive and the open fields as it starts to gradually slope up over several hundred feet to the property line. This is a view from Columbia Street South entrance. This is access to the parent pickup and drop-off. The student parking is beyond. This is an opportunity for us to identify the school. This is a view looking at the student parking with the parent drop-off and pickup lane, starting at the Columbia Street South entrance that we just viewed. We talked about improving the pedestrian safety, and the way that we're going to do that is at that parent drop-off. That is a 2-lane road, but it will be one way during arrival and dismissal, so that we don't have parents coming in off of School Street and coming down this road, letting off their children across traffic. I did want to identify that is the main student entrance into the building, also where we would expect large groups to come in for events either in the gymnasium or the auditorium. Our walkways are raised. You may not see that in the rendering, but they are, and I wanted to identify that. We talked about the mechanical screening and how we're going to do that. So we're going to do that with a series of plantings. Brian can speak to that more in the next couple of slides. But we wanted you to see we've also placed this fence to keep students from walking across the parent pickup and drop off. They will only be able to cross at those raised crosswalks at those 2 points that we've identified. The front of the school faces School Street. This is the School Street West entrance. One of the comments we had at the TRC was to make sure that we had a continuous sidewalk at the handicap parking spaces so they could exit their vehicle, get onto the walkway, and then cross over. One of the landscaping features we have outside of the theater is this small planting area between the theater and the main entrance into the school. Brian's going to speak to some additional landscaping. We're still considering the strategies of how best to screen vehicular headlights opposing the School Street residential side. And lastly, this is a slide from the staff parking area where we are coming up against our neighbors. So our neighbors are immediately to the right and behind me in this image. This is where we are putting new and existing landscaping and a new fence to screen our property from the neighbors. We did relocate that dumpster location from the property line and moved it interior to the site near the loading area. And directly to the left is the School Street East entrance point of entry. So I'm going to ask Sam Hemingway, our site civil engineer, to come up and discuss to the extent that you want any of the technical questions you may have. We do have the drawings that were in our submission are also on this slide deck as well. Sam?
Thank you.
So I'm like Phil, I'm a little uncertain on how much.
Just state your name for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please.
My name is Sam Hemingway. I'm an engineer with the firm of Garofalo and Associates doing business out of Providence. Again, this project has been presented. We've been before this board a couple of times and have run through some generalizations and some outlining some of the major components of the plan. That may not necessarily be true for some of the people here. I probably want to touch on them again to remind the board what you've seen and what we've talked about, but I'm not going to dig very deep. So, if that's not appropriate, obviously I can expand on any of those specific items. So the property is about 16 acres. It is zoned government and institutional, so the existing school on the property is an allowed use. Similarly, the proposed school is wholly comports the underlying zone requirements. There is as part of this application, there is a waiver specifically requested from the zoning for the building height. That waiver requests a height of 61 feet where 35 is allowable within the zone. The full height of the building is established based on the building architecture, the components of the building program, and the specifics of the building design itself, which are much better spoken to by folks other than me. But as far as this board's purview under the Unified Development, the fact that there is relief requested and associated with that is a part of the application. Generally speaking, though, the school is very similar, and the layout is very similar to the existing conditions, so that there's about half the site is currently paved, and similarly, because we're simply shifting the components over, that the pavement will go down slightly, but will be very similar. As with the existing school, the components of the program kind of break into major parts, right? So there is the building itself. Obviously, there are a lot of programming information that goes into the shape and size of the building. There is a primary parking field that will be utilized by the student population, so that on this drawing, it's north of the building, that large field in what is, at least from the school street, from the public view side towards the back of the building. So the student population is expected to enter from that parking field, so through crosswalks, pedestrian egress ways from that parking field to major entrances in the back of the school. There is staff parking on this plan on the east end of the project. It's so a staff area associated with the people working in the school with a separate, so that, although the entrance is not separate, a second path of egress, a usable egress corridor is expected from that parking field to the end of the building. In front of the school, on the south side along School Street, there is primarily visitor parking, although it would not be restricted as such, so there would be reserved parking or assigned parking to staff in that location, but handicap parking and visitor parking for both the school lobby entrance as well as for the theater entrance. So there are two primary entrances on that south side along School Street, at least visually and functionally, one being the theater entry lobby, and the second being the school I guess the main entrance to the building lobby. The last component that is worth noting is the second building on the property, which is the Hazard building. So that building is currently on the property, is not proposed to be altered with this application, but is part of the school program and utilized by the school staff. The parking field to the south of that will effectively be unchanged. It will be reduced in size because there's a fairly considerable overlap between the school operations, the bus drop-off zone, and the hazard parking components. Currently, those pieces are pulled apart much more on under the new program, so that we were able to reduce the size and provide us a separate entrance, really for the functioning of the special needs busing circulation and the employees of the hazard building. So there's a separation, although there's obviously connectivity between the structures. The last component, if I didn't mention already, is a relocation of the fields or park area on the property as a whole. Again, it's 15 acres. Almost 6 acres of that is dedicated as a park, or effectively it's the practice fields and the surrounding areas. So that area will be the entire north end of the property, where the student and lot and the existing school currently exist. So again, that's the 10,000-foot level. To bring you up to speed, I don't know if you want to get a little bit deeper. The second slide I put up was the nitty-gritty of, I think, realistically why I'm here. So the civil engineering component of this project, you'll hear discussions about the building from Phil. You'll hear traffic discussions about circulation and the like. The parking is very similar to what it currently exists. The civil engineer is the utilities, the stormwater management, the construction components of the exterior construction and requirements and materials associated with that, aside from the landscape, the vegetation, and the surfacing that will also be discussed by somebody else. So this plan, I know it's difficult to see, but much of it is in my mind, so I'm going to try and walk you through the major components. As part of this application, we also put in the waivers. We included discussion on 2 waivers that I'm honestly, I'm not 100% sure they are waivers, but I would like to touch on them. The first is regarding interior landscaping. So there is a provision for islands within parking fields with an aggregate a percentage of interior landscaping that is required by ordinance. We meet the overall percentages prescribed for the size of each lot, each new lot that we're proposing, but there is a specific requirement for island spacings at 12 parking spaces, which is embedded in that percentage that we are proposing not to meet. The intent of that is to congregate the landscape areas into more functional sizes and locations for the specific use. Specifically, that's to get larger green spaces and pedestrian egresses to the fields from the school, so students could go in, rather than having a small island and lining up soldier-like. There's more of an opportunity for classes, entire classes, to get out to the fields. The other, I kind of lost track a little bit there, but the other component that is worth touching on is the utilities. Some of the changes that we've, I'm sorry, I was speaking of the waivers. The other portions of the waiver were the checklist requirements for the specific plan requirements and coordination that is needed to be done as this project continues through the process. So that there is typically a requirement for final coordination of utilities and the like to have occurred at this point. Because of the schedule and the processing of this program, although we have initiated and have gotten us significantly far with those coordination efforts, the final sign-off, as an example from Department of Public Services or Engineering, they have seen the plan, we have reviewed the locations, we have talked about capacity of the water system and the sewer system. We have talked over the stormwater management. We have gotten feedback from them. We have incorporated most of those changes, but that work is still ongoing and will continue to occur as we go to the next stage. Our hope is that all of that will occur at a staff level, allowing that final coordination to be checked off administratively by staff. So. To the specifics of the design, so one of the most significant changes as it relates to the engineering of this site has to do with stormwater management. I think that's obviously it's a focus of this board regularly. In this instance, the surface runoff from this property actually discharges in virtually every location. So we reviewed the property with 4 separate design points, one heading up eastward towards, I want to say, Brown Street, one heading southeast towards School Street and Oak Street. That specific watershed was identified by Public Services to have some existing issues that certainly ought to be addressed by this project, and to the extent it's feasible, enhancements have been incorporated to try and make betterments within that watershed. Certainly the standard is no adverse impacts, either increases in peak runoff, but more critically, based on policy at the town, although it's not technically required at the state level, no increases in volume of runoff. So considerable effort has been made to introduce stormwater management that recharges into the groundwater system. We have also, there are quite a few infiltration systems on the property already. We're going to replicate those, relocate, and enlarge those. But we are also introducing surface stormwater management. That is something that, although does exist on the property, exists in a much smaller way. So there are several bioretention or sand filter installations on that property. They look like retrofits that have occurred over the years. We are actually going to maintain those, but include a much larger stormwater management surface treatment and recharge system on the western side of the property, that is towards Columbia Street. That is far and away the area where there is the most capacity for runoff anyway. So we have made a concerted effort to maximize the amount of the property that goes to those facilities, and to design those facilities in a way that works both aesthetically and also functionally for the school and the maintenance group. There is also a discharge to the southwest towards the intersection of School and Hazard. It actually crosses, at the Hazard building, but crosses Columbia Street and heads to the southwest. That area, there's very little work occurring in that area, but there will, as is required, will be reductions, but incremental, but primarily due to eliminating pavement and areas of existing development rather than introduction of new stormwater measures. So I won't go too much more on about utilities, but other than to say we have in fact provided capacity type information to the board. We have certainly coordinated with the utility departments and have a utility arrangement that we think lends itself well to one of the other issues that was raised by this board and has been a significant discussion with the team throughout, which is the sequencing and phasing and introduction and interim conditions during the project that came up during the TRC, and frankly, I think was it opened a dialogue with the team that was very fruitful, and we have rearranged some of the utilities, looked at connecting them in other locations to improve those conditions, to allow for existing facilities to stay in place while those buildings and parking areas stayed in place, allowing suitable sequencing. And as Phil alluded to, we also added some temporary measures, enlarged some temporary measures, specifically in that watershed that I spoke of earlier to the southeast, towards Oak Street, where problems are known to exist. There will be a period of time where although the long-term end result will be a significant reduction in that watershed, during the construction period, there will be some times where there will be increases in impervious areas. We have, again, we believe, offset that suitably with temporary measures, enlarging basically of the sediment basins that were already proposed. The last slide, which Phil put up, was in regards to lighting. I didn't touch on it, sort of an overlap area between the landscape team and our own, but the light-off fixtures will in fact be dark sky compliant, so cut-off fixtures. The heights, as indicated, are at 16 feet, which is significantly lower than you would see in large retail-type settings, so large parking fields associated with retail, so a more pedestrian scale. It requires more fixtures, but provides a more even lighting, where at an average of about 2-foot candles, which I believe, although not my expertise, is typical towards the general use. So I think at the 10,000-foot level, that's the major components. I'm here, again, you saw the plan. We have a lot of information. There's a lot of information in your packets. I'm happy to dig deeper into any one of those specific items as we move forward.
Thank you. Do board members have questions for Mr. Hemingway related to engineering, stormwater, circulation, and so on?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Hi, I have
Hi.
one question. You mentioned earlier that you had talked about the sequencing. Would you be able to explain that for a moment?
Yeah, so the easiest way I think to describe it is that we had a pretty significant interaction where the two buildings met. There's a utility core, both for the existing building and the proposed building. So we had a lot of crisscrossing utilities, and utilities that, as an example, the water line and fire hydrants need to be maintained in service while the kids are in the existing school, but the new fire line needs to be installed and frankly needs to be providing service for firefighting on the other side of the construction site. So the major change that we made was to extract the way we approach the utilities into the buildings to come from opposite directions to the extent they could, so that we eliminated a lot of those overlap areas, allowing us to leave the current configuration as long as possible. Obviously, there will always be a period when the building comes down where we need to do overlapping work, but that, in a nutshell, it was the approach we took, and I think we made pretty significant strides toward that. That is part of the reason we didn't have the final coordination, is because where we normally would have submitted and dotted the i's, crossed the t's, and got the final, we made some of those changes and basically restarted that. But DPS has been, I believe, active and understanding of what we've done, and certainly have reviewed the plans and have not identified any issues that we didn't foresee.
Other questions, comments? Joe?
I have seen the project several times at this meeting as well as the TRC, so I don't have a lot of questions. But I'm wondering about the 4-foot drop on the playing fields. That seems like one would be noticeable, and two, maybe a little more than you need for drainage, and maybe a little. I'm wondering if it's conducive to actual playing field, and why haven't you looked at something a little more gentle, just do some cuts and fills? And
we have attempted, it is less to do with cuts and fills. There is a general need to drop across the site. So one of the slides that came up earlier is there's about an 11-foot drop. So those properties on the high side with the current student lot is about 11 feet higher, or maybe 12 feet higher than Columbia. So there is a need for a gentle drop. The percentage, I don't have in front of me, but if you give me a few minutes with the scale, I can tell you. It's deceiving. It's a large site, and it's pretty similar to the existing fields, to be honest with you. It is. I don't believe we approach 2%. Which we typically would if it wasn't a playing surface. Normally we would like to keep 2% across vegetated areas just to maintain and stop puddling. It's a little flatter than that, but I think it exceeds 1%, which would typically pose a serious problem with depressions with ponding water. So I can look at it further. I believe it's a little deceiving on the plans. We are certainly in that range of 1% to 2%, which is typical for a playing field. Where possible, we would like to have a crown in the center and push it in different directions. This site kind of led us towards high side to low side at a continuous grade. So,
I'm sure there's a plethora of published data or information on playing fields and what the maximum slope is or what the range of the slope should be. Have you looked at that? What is for a playing field? If you looked at it for slope, what would it tell me is the recommended amount?
The most typical installation would be a 2% slope.
For a playing field?
For a playing field, but typically you would try and crown the field. Now there are an awful lot of fields at schools that are in excess of 4%. So there's no question, if this was a competition field, right? If this was the stadium, if this was where the kids were going to be playing competitive sports, there would probably be an effort to manipulate things and maybe change how you would approach it. As a park and practice facility, it's completely within the norm and frankly more level than many fields that you would think of as being typical. Again, similar to the existing fields, as an example, right? So that field that's at the school now is pretty similar, right? It drops about 6 to 8 feet across the length of it. It is usual for the setups that they have, half fields. They have several sports on there. They run a lot of different programs at the same time. Is highly functional at that slope.
Okay. And there's no lighting back there, is that correct?
Correct. So the only lighting would be a spillover from the parking area. So that right next to the parking field, there might be an opportunity for evening, but certainly there's no intent for lighted facilities there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. Hemingway, perhaps when you refer to specific areas of the plan for the benefit of the board and members of the public, perhaps we can zoom into those areas on the plan?
Yes, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. So those plans are PDFs made from the full size, so they should be legible down to the, if you want to look at the dumpster pad, we could probably get you in there.
Other questions, comments from planning board members?
Yeah, I have a question.
Caper?
Looking at the interior parking where you're looking for a waiver, specifically the requirement that you have 12 parking spaces maximum between islands. Why do you need the change, and how is this going to impact the aesthetics from the standpoint of the neighborhood?
I'm not sure from the neighborhood. So the change, first and foremost, the spacing that's proposed has always been proposed. I think it was brought up during the review of staff that there is, in fact, a diagram within that section of the ordinance that outlines 12 spaces between islands. It was at the time when we initially submitted this, it was our understanding, or from reading the language of the ordinance, that those diagrams reflected a series of opportunities that you could use to meet the interior landscaping objective. That particular one is not one we had selected, but we did use what I believe it's the intent of the plan, and I think is most suitable at this site to have fewer small islands, and so to reduce the number of islands by making them larger and more functional, which was presented initially, and frankly, I really put that request in there because I'm not sure what the language actually says, but we would like to, the island configuration that we've shown is the one that we think is most suitable, if that helps.
I guess my real problem is that there's a reference to a figure 8, which I couldn't find in my materials. So I have no sense of what the requirements, the aesthetics that the requirements would generate, and how that contrasts with the aesthetics that you're talking about. And I also, that's all thinking about it from the standpoint of the interior of the parking lot, and from the impact on the neighborhood. I'm also curious about what that looks like from, shall we say, street level, or from the perspective of the neighbors.
Yeah, so that figure is within your ordinance. I can try and pull it up in some manner, if you like. That's from the zoning code. From a practical standpoint, I'm not sure how to describe the difference that it would look like, other than instead of 9 times 12, some whatever that is, 100 and some odd feet. And instead of 110 feet between islands, it's 113 feet between islands. So to the extent that you can see that, you can certainly.
I understand the math, and I'm not averse to the request, but before I can consider how I feel about a waiver of the requirement, I have to have a better ability to visualize what it is that you're talking about versus what it is that the zoning requires. I just have to, in order
I don't
to
know what
think
the hell.
about whether a waiver is warranted, I kind of have to be able to visualize it. And maybe that's my shortcoming,
Yeah.
but that's how I think about it.
So I'm not sure what the figure, so the resolution, if this helps, and I honestly don't know how to I don't know how to respond to that, but I will say that the resolution that we saw if that language does in fact require that does require it, the resolution would be to extend the parking lot by 9 feet closer to the abutter and insert an island within the parking field, right? So I think we calculated it would be a net loss of 7 parking spaces and a parking field that was, I want to say it was 6 feet closer to an abutter. So-
Perhaps this is a question better answered by the landscape architect when we get to that point. Anything else?
Yeah, the building heights, I'm just curious, because I recognize that you're looking for a waiver on the building heights, and the current building already exceeds the heights that you're talking about, but your proposed project is 61 feet at the tallest point, which requires a 26-foot height variance. What is the underlying need for the 61-foot height?
So the extent of the...
Just please restate your name.
Sure, Philip Conte, Studio Jade. The maximum height that we're asking for represents one building component, which is a stair tower that would provide direct access to the roof. It is that one singular tower element that functionally will enable the building to be maintained and operations in a much safer and normalized fashion, being able to walk up steps and directly onto the roof. It also identifies and anchors a part of the building, which is at the student and community entrance on the field side of the building. That is the one maximum point, the highest point.
Can you help me understand where it fits into your development plan?
See if I could find, probably this image would probably help. If you could see my cursor right here, that represents the highest point. That represents the stair tower that provides direct access to the roof. And in terms of where it is here in this image, it is this stair tower right here. If you see my cursor in the upper left-hand corner of the building, right here, that provides roof access. That represents the maximum height.
And is there anything else that goes above the 35-foot height?
Well, yeah, the third floor of the building goes beyond that as well. Let me see if we can find an image. I'd say it's this academic block,
So that
the
when you say,
three-story building.
so when you say academic block, that's like classrooms?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. Okay, and that tower you were talking
It's
about?
right there.
Okay, so it's all in the same vicinity?
It's all in the same spot. Yes.
And that's Columbia. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members? Susan?
We had talked a little bit about sequencing. Could you also tell me how traffic will work during construction? So I see that there's a staging area and potentially part of the new building that will be where the present bus pickup lane is by the Hazard School? Like, how is that going to be managed? Is there a different location for bus pickup that's going to be arranged, or will it all be out front? Like, what is your plan for that traffic circulation during construction?
Sure, so I probably will defer to Paul, and maybe we'll have the traffic discussion now that would probably answer that question, and then we'll wrap up with landscaping, if that's okay? Is that okay?
Then before we move on, I have another question. That perimeter walking track that
Yes.
you had back by the backfields, that might or might not be included.
Correct.
Is the sidewalk along that exit road part of that? Is that,
That's part of the walking path, because we have sidewalk along Columbia Street.
okay, so there may or may not be one along that exit road that was part of the questionable part?
Correct.
Okay. And I think that's good for now for me. Thank you.
All right,
I have some questions for Mr. Hemingway.
okay.
Given the fact that the stormwater plan and this plan as a whole is evolving, do you feel comfortable with the effectiveness of your stormwater plan specifically related to a 100-year storm?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, it is evolving, but it has been completed and submitted. The materials that are outlines the requirements of the state, which are wholly met by the original application. The changes that are meeting are all being provided to increase those. And frankly, we have compiled and submitted to the state of Rhode Island for those permits. So we are anticipating to get those. Certainly we'll have those before we move to final. So,
Okay. One of your waivers does ask for a submission of your stormwater permit at final, but it sounds as though you've already initiated a dialogue with DEM, hopefully, so that things can move along more efficiently?
Yeah, I think technically the intent there is not to submit our DEM permit at this stage. So we have developed the plans to reflect drainage and compliance with state law. We have submitted to the state for a permit. We do not anticipate that permit to be in hand for another, probably in all likelihood, a couple of months. So the ask is that when those permits come in, the staff can review them and confirm that all of the obligations of the process as a whole are met.
But you have had conversations so that things will move along smoothly rather than later on in the process as far as the permits?
Yes, in conversations, we have submitted the application, we have not had conversations. So we have had conversations with the town public services. We have submitted permit plans that reflect conformance to state law, to the state.
I would urge you to have that dialogue as early as possible with DEM in order to improve the efficiency and timeframe of this project. Always a good idea. The new field, have you established a timeframe for that, and is there any potential for requirement of remediation? Is that likely to be a brownfield site, or have you thought about that?
There's no indication, well, let's see.
Hi, Kate Turner with Left Field. We've just completed our Phase 2 environmental site investigation on the high school site. The area of excavation for the new school, we did not receive any borings that indicated any exceedances of any levels. We did have one small area right outside of what's currently the wood shop, that at between 7 and 8 feet, there was a slightly elevated level of TPH, but it did not include any VOCs, so we do not need to submit a release report to RIDEM.
Thank you. If you would like to continue with your presentation.
Great. Thank you. We'll go to traffic first, and then we'll finish up with landscaping, if that's okay. Existing aerial. Yes, and then behind it is the proposed.
Good evening. Paul Bannon, traffic consultant with Crossman Engineering. We were brought on to assist the site engineer on the access design for the project, assess what's happening today, and make any recommendations for the future design. As part of that effort, we conducted site visits at different times of the day, days of the week, to observe the arrival and dismissal periods, review the roadway geometry or for site distances at the proposed driveways. We completed a traffic counting program, including manual turning movement counts during the arrival and dismissal periods at each of the driveways. We also obtained 24-hour data on both Columbia Street and School Street during the midweek period to get an understanding what the volumes of traffic that are serviced on the roads. And then we assessed the safety and operations of what was happening at the school, so we could translate that into the future design. As you can see, the school itself is located on the northeast corner of the Columbia Street intersection with School Street. There are 3 driveways on Columbia Street. The northern driveway provides access to the rear of the building. That's the only access to the parking lot for the students. The middle is the entry to the teacher parking lot at the front of the school, along with what is the arrival and dismissal, pickup, and drop off for the parents. The southern driveway on Columbia is the bus loop one-way exit. The driveway on School Street, it's two-way for 150 feet for access into the Hazard building parking lot, and then it's one way for bus access during school periods. Parents use that from that direction during arrival and dismissal periods, entering the Hazard school parking lot to drop off their children. The arrival and dismissal procedures, the morning period is the most congested period of the day. There are approximately 200 parent drop-offs, and that all occurs on typically most of it, or 70% of it, occurs on Columbia Street, where all the parents are required to enter that middle driveway and then head north through the parking lot, drop off the student, and then proceed to the northern driveway and exit. That pattern in itself creates congestion because there's conflict where people are headed south on Columbia that have to turn left in while people are trying to turn out of that northern driveway and go left. So there's a standing queue that has to be serviced. So it's presently very inefficient. The afternoon, the pickup period is roughly half of what the morning is, and it's much cleaner, but you have the conflict where you have all the students coming out of the back lot conflicting with the parents that are picking up students, so that they're in the same driveway, which creates congestion for like a 15-minute period. So the buses, there are more buses in the morning, roughly 20 buses that come in and exit quickly. During the afternoon, there are only 6 buses that pick up students. They double stack on the driveway, and they're serviced efficiently. The proposed. Okay, under the proposed condition, what we try to do when we're doing school project is to separate the main elements, the buses, the parents, and the teachers. So as you can see here with the proposed design, there's we've increased the points of access to the site. We've also separated buses to School Street, teachers off to the east, and then students and parents to the rear of the school. So those 3 elements are not focused on one point, which today parents and teachers are focused on Columbia Street. So this allows parents coming down School Street to access the driveway on School Street, then to the rear of the building to the parking lot. Coming down Columbia Street, there's much greater separation in two driveways that allow two-way flow with access to Columbia Street. So people heading south on Columbia can use one driveway, people going to the north can use the other driveway. We're proposing to manage the flow along the front during the arrival and dismissal periods for the parent drop-off, where we would make that one block one way, so parents would have to go right and loop in the parking lot. That way we reduce the amount of conflicts with all the students walking in the defined crosswalk areas. So we feel this, with this design, it greatly improves existing operations and safety for students and parents and operations overall.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last thing that you said about the parents looping? So the parents are going in from the right entrance on School Street?
If
looping
you're
around.
coming in from School Street, from Kingston Road, like they do today, they come in and loop in the hazard lot and then go right back out. In this instance, they can loop to the back of the school and then into the parking lot, drop off their child, and then loop back out, and they can exit onto Columbia, which they would more likely do. No, just the segment between the driveways to the parking lot. See where the tree line is as you come in the curve? So here's a driveway. So this block from here to here would be one way in the eastbound direction. So parents that drop someone off, they can loop back and go that way, or they can go to School Street and out to Kingstown Road. So where today they're limited to one driveway, conflicting with people entering, so that won't occur in the future.
Questions related to traffic and circulation for Mr. Bannon? Anyone? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will finish up with landscaping. And you can speak to this plan. We'll start here.
And then just advance on. Good evening. I'm Brian Morgan, professional landscape architect and principal at Site Studios. I wanted to start by just kind of circling back to the parking question and see if I can help address some of that. So, and also just talking, we've been listening for much of this process, just to hear the different parties, the different users, the different audiences that are going to be impacted by the design. And so in the parking lot in particular, we have multiple different desires from different parties. So one of those, would be maintenance. So the snow plowing, snow removal, we had started off with a handful more trees. You can see some gaps in the tree cover on the north side of that parking area, just to be able to give some breaks where snow can be pushed off of the parking areas. So, maintenance was one of the drivers. Pedestrian access, safe student access, being able to get to the fields from the school. And so those wide, almost promenade walkways, leading to the athletic fields, that was also, something that had an impact on the design. But what we have done and how we have attempted to ensure that all the surrounding users and participants would not be impacted is to really buffer that on the perimeter as well. So we have taken every opportunity, like Sam was saying, with the larger areas, the larger islands that have been created, particularly on the west side of the screen. We've tried to beef those up and provide, the maximum density that we can provide and get the biggest bang for the buck out of those larger green spaces. So I think, in terms of the effectiveness of screening and protecting neighbors from seeing, a sea of parking, we have, done a reasonable job of addressing that and and buffering the perimeter of the parking area. The other issue would be heat island effect, and again, we have, made every effort to cover as much and shade as much of the parking as we potentially can, just to eliminate some of those concerns. So hopefully that helps kind of explain how we've arrived at where we are with the parking.
Let's try going up.
Questions related to landscaping? Susan?
Hi, I've got my most questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure where to start here. So one of the questions I have is about the meetings with the abutting property owners and the decision to use a PVC white, stockade fence to surround the property.
Yes.
I wasn't part of that neighbor meeting. Was that something that all of the neighbors were in favor of, or was that a controversial topic, the decision to put a solid fence around the entire property?
I don't recall any controversy at all on the topic, but it was heavily discussed. There was a lot of comment. There are multiple fences. We've got 2 layers of fencing out there. There's a chain link fence on the perimeter on the north and east sides.
We want to go to site plan.
Yes. So along those 2 sides, there are, a chain link fence, and then property owners have installed their own, most of those, I would say, wooden fences along those perimeter edges. So there are, 2 fences along this northern property boundary, and often 2 fences along this boundary as well. Around the staff parking on the east side, it is predominantly chain link. Chain link was not something that people were embracing and wanted to see. So, the options were to provide a solid fence. We discussed wood, and that was, not possible because of maintenance concerns. We want something that's going to fill the purpose of being the opaque barrier, but then also, have the greatest longevity. So, I think that was where we arrived at the white vinyl fence. And then, feeling that it was important to be able to provide the buffer, particularly the property owners on the east side, with the parking areas, those along the open play areas, the open field, things are being pushed back away from their dwellings significantly. So I think they're getting more relief just by nature of the design and the positioning of the building. So it didn't appear that it was as stringent a concern on those ends, although it was still, part of the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So the property that's to the southeast, that one lone, I think it's a multifamily house in the bottom
Yes.
right-hand corner.
Yes.
Is that fence that's there now in an incorrect location? Because it looks like your fence is on the eastern side of all of that canopy of trees and right alongside of that driveway, where I drove by today and there appears to be a large patch of lawn next to their parking area, then a chain link fence. Like, is that fence now in the incorrect place?
So the fencing is all in that area, the fencing is all on the interior of the school's parcel.
Because this photograph even here, which shows your fence right basically alongside that driveway, isn't, I think, if you looked at even Google Earth, it's not, I don't think that's where.
We can pull up the existing conditions plan
Okay.
and hone in specifically on the fencing. The fencing that is shown here is all proposed fencing, and the existing fencing has been turned off. It's just frozen in the proposed conditions design. I spent a fair amount of time, several hours one afternoon just walking the perimeter and kind of surveying the vegetation, just to get a feel for what was out there, the existing conditions. If there were significant trees that could potentially be impacted. So on this plan, you can see these lighter, just kind of shaded representations. And those are existing trees that, those on the hazard property that we were just showing to, make sure that, everyone's aware that there is green space there. But there is one significant tree. Sam had mentioned in his conversation as well that we did take steps to push the grading forward, to move, those parking stalls forward to be able to protect that tree. The mature trees, I would say all of the trees are on the property line or inward to the adjoining parcel owners. What is between the fence and the lawn area on the school property is really invasive and, scrub and brush layers. So not the most sightly. And so we are looking to, protect those trees. We've even, gone as far as providing notation on the plan that I will walk it with the contractor to make sure when the fence is staked out that we're not impacting, any critical root zones or anything on the existing vegetation. We want to keep the mature canopy in place on the perimeter, just to keep that buffer for those property owners.
That's what I wanted to hear. I walked it today, and I do agree that some of those trees are, Norway maple. They're not, there's a bunch of junk out there.
This one that we're protecting
However, there is, though, a
Norway.
canopy,
Right.
especially along,
Yes.
just above the teacher parking lot, there's at least a green canopy. And in some cases, it appears that those mature trees, they may be on the neighbor's property, but they're snugged up very close to the chain link. So I don't know if they can be saved, but if they are worthy of saving, for me, I would prefer to see those mature, the oaks and the things saved there, as opposed to having them taken down and then some 2-inch saplings put in their stead. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know if there can be any wiggle on the location of that fencing and property line.
We have a wide green space, particularly on the north side, where the bulk of those mature trees. On that east side, it's relatively wide open.
Yes.
There's very little vegetation along there. The south side has, around that apartment building, the multifamily building, it does have, mature trees on both sides. Semi-mature trees. There's some small canopy trees out there. Our intent is to be able to retain all of those, and we believe that this plan that we're putting forth will accomplish that. We are going to enhance the plantings inside the fence so that, again, it's not just a fence, and there is added vegetation to enhance that canopy, but certainly not to limit or alter any of those trees. I believe the plan that we're putting forth has taken out only the invasive and less sightly, scrub layer and preserving the canopy.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Does this plan propose to remove the maples that are presently, it looks like you're removing the maples that are along Columbia Street, which is now the front of the school? That
On the
row,
Columbia
all the
side-
street trees are gone?
On the Columbia side, those would be coming out based on the grading out to the street. So I think we have Norway maples along the school street side, as I recall, and then I believe they were Bradford pears, predominantly along that
Were they?
Columbia.
I didn't stop
Columbia
and look. I
side.
thought they were maple when I
So
drove by.
in either case,
Yeah,
Norways are highly invasive.
Yeah.
Certainly not a favorite. It's the only plant that I've encountered that I would describe as having a 99% germination ratio, because every seed pod that hits is going to be another Norway. And then the Bradford pears,
No one plants those anymore.
developed out of the National Arboretum in the 30s. I'm a University of Maryland graduate. The original plantings were on Adelphi Road, now an invasive species, and really to be avoided. So, but again, we'll be replacing the alley of trees or the street trees on that student entrance side that is shown here, and still preserving establishing canopy along that side.
Okay, and I have one more question. Sorry, I'm trying to go quick. So looking at your tree and shrub list,
Yes.
it's got an interesting list there. It's got some very pretty ornamental things.
Awesome, thank you.
But maybe half of it is not species that are native to this area, and some are southern. You've got some southern magnolia, you've got a few things that aren't typically found here in our New England landscape.
Absolutely.
And I don't know who this is a question for, because we are the developer.
Yes.
We taxpayers are the developer. But I wonder if a 1-year guarantee on the landscaping could be bumped up to additional years, especially since some of those varieties are typically found in the southern part of the United States. And I don't know how they feel about 2 feet of snow in a freezing cold winter, and how, typically we would impress upon the developer to replace those trees after they die after 2 years, except we're the developers. So I don't know how this works, but
So
1 year guarantee on the trees is maybe shorter than we often do for developments here.
if I could just
We do 2 years on street trees.
to explain myself on the approach that has taken. Things are changing like crazy. Things are changing with our weather patterns. USDA hardiness maps were just updated for this first time in a very long time, but we all saw significant changes where Rhode Island is 7A. Go figure. So what is it going to be 10 years from now? If we don't bring in a handful of selections from Southern climate to prolong future canopy, it's going to be a problem. The climate is changing, and we're seeing that in the recent updates. And so this is partially these are all not necessarily New England species, but the ones that have been brought in are definitely Zone 7A species. And that's the rationale behind that. I'm trying to look forward in all of our planting design so that we are addressing longevity and not, creating only species that are going to survive today, but will start to decline in the next decade.
I appreciate that answer and that logic. But like this winter, I think we lost a lot of stuff. It was dry last summer, it was wicked windy and wicked cold this winter, and there's a lot of stuff out there that didn't make it this winter.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm thinking about. So thank you for that answer, though. That's
Absolutely.
great.
We've also, I've selected, they're not 100% native species, but I would say they're 90% native species. And where I fell off on those were on the tree selections, particularly close to the building and in the parking lots. Having species that are going to be, litter shedders and, seed pods and things of that nature, I've kind of got to adapt, and I'm open. If there are things on there that are hated, then, we can definitely revisit those. But that's just the strategy that I've attempted to take here.
Thus, the Gleditsia in the parking lot.
Yes.
Appreciate your effort at thinking about this as an academic institution rather than a retail type facility. And the multi-species variety that you have, I think, also represents potential for a learning opportunity for the students as well.
I hope so.
Can you show us where on the map you have retaining walls, location, and composition?
Sure. There's a couple things. We've got some closer views as well that, we can run through also. But there are a series of site walls. All of the walls would be the same construction detail. And I've got some samples of what that would look like. So the first wall, Phil had shown an entrance, an approach with the school name on the face of the wall. So that is this retaining wall here. It's not really a retaining wall. It's more of a landscape and aesthetic feature. It's not serving a tremendous function, but really put there to, to really define the space and to identify the school. We have another sitting wall that wraps all the way around the outdoor learning area, the student area here. This has, it's an ashlar stone, so, an angular rectilinear stone pattern with a capstone, 18 inches high, so a comfortable seating height. And then we have stamped concrete that is inside of the outdoor learning area. We have another seating wall that wraps around the maintenance area, with landscape screening. We've, definitely want to protect that from view and be able to keep back of the house features back of the house. And so, we've got columnar evergreens that are planted around that entire space. And then there's a sitting wall that extends around this, we've called them walking gardens. We have one outside the theater building and then a small space here as well. Those will also have just the walkway would be stamped concrete to kind of tie all of those wall features and social spaces or more private spaces all together. And then on the front area, we also have a sitting wall with the same fabric, same material that surrounds that space as well. So those three areas would have the ashlar stone with the cap, and then the walkways or the plaza area and the outdoor learning would all be stamped concrete.
You made a reference earlier to a coordinated effort with folks who are grading, installing. That will be very important. So not only the installation, but of course the maintenance thereafter. So any kind of list that you can make or formulate with regard to the timing and the coordination would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Establishment of the new field, I'm assuming you have some kind of erosion and sediment control plan for that. Have you thought about how that would evolve?
Certainly, and Sam and I have been working through that one together, for material placement and specifications for, the top dressing that we'll be relying on to generate the turf grass stand. But yes, that is all being coordinated together.
Very good. And can you address the question that Caper asked earlier about the parking lot landscaping?
It was a two-part question. They were looking for a waiver so that you would eliminate one of the islands. And I understand why you want to eliminate the island, and I appreciate the fact that that expands your parking capability. But I was thinking about to what extent that would impact the view from the neighbors in the neighborhood.
So I apologize. I jumped in, and that was really what I was attempting to target, and perhaps I didn't do an excellent job of that. But in terms of the surrounding property owners, we have put perimeter screening to the extent that it's a pretty dense screen, but to the extent practical. So keeping in mind the individual that will be out there snow plowing, and we have provided breaks in some of that on the northern side just to be able to give opportunities to push snow from the parking lot. That it's really the perimeter screening, and then heavying up, as Sam was indicating, making larger spaces that we can increase the density. Trees want to grow in clumps as well. Having one standalone tree, observations and the learning process now, there's really an underground communication process that's happening with those trees, and those roots will interlock, and they're so much more resistant to, overtopping and wind when you have massing. So that's another advantage to having kind of that perimeter landscape. Does that help? Does that
Well, my question really goes more to...
Why not the islands? Is that...
Well, I'm not a fan of the islands. I think my dog is a fan of the islands, but no one else is. But I was trying to picture it from the neighbor's perspective. I don't know, what are the landscaping needs of the area, and are the neighbors disadvantaged by the removal of the islands or not?
I don't believe there's any impact or any adverse impact to removing the islands from the neighbor's perspective. I think the only person that might benefit is the teenager that's going to come hop in a car, and if it had shade over top of it, that'd be great. That would be ideal. And these ordinances are typically written with those thoughts in mind. It's to break up that sea of parking and to address heat island effect, to provide some shading through those parking areas. And so really, these two spaces that are, walkways currently that could have otherwise or would have otherwise been islands, from the surrounding properties, you're looking inward, you're not going to see past the perimeter edge of vegetation to know what is or isn't inside that space. And that has been our attempt or our approach in this design, to be able to, enclose the perimeter so that nobody would be impacted, you know, in one way or the other by removing those islands.
But your overall goal is to increase the density of the parking.
So, Madam Chair, I may be able to bring some regulatory clarity to this, if I may.
As long as it's understandable.
I'll do my best as a planner. Mr. Manny always tells me I talk too technical, so I'll try to speak less technical. Phil, can you just focus on blow up the eastern teacher parking lot? So, Keeper, I think one of your questions is, if you look at the regulatory requirements for this specific parking lot, there's 2 rows of parking to the interior of this parking lot. By code, they require 2 landscaped end caps. So you would lose 4 parking spaces, where you would put a 8-foot island with a couple of trees in it. What they've done in asking for relief is taking that interior landscaping, those 2 islands, and pushed it to the exterior, where it has more benefit to the abutting neighbors, and included understory planting, and included a fence as a buffer.
Okay, so what you're saying is they've matched the landscaping by moving it to the exterior,
Yep.
except that the place that the variance is talking about is in the student parking.
Yep, I'm using this as an
Okay.
example, I'll move over there. So in all our discussions with the design team, it's if you're asking for relief and the regulations require you to plant 10 trees, don't ask for relief and only plant 8. Ask for relief and plant 12. So in essence, that's been their mindset throughout the design development process. We can talk about varieties and placement and other things. But if you can just focus, so if we look at the top left part of this schematic, where you see coming from the school headed northerly, you have a sidewalk next to the school, there's 2 crosswalks, there's 2 paved sidewalks or concrete sidewalks, 2 crosswalks, and then 2 interior islands. Those interior islands contain crosswalks and 2 small grass strips. I've had conversations with Luke Murray as a representative of the town and the building committee. The crosswalks are, say, 10 feet. The sidewalk areas within the islands are larger. There's an opportunity to reduce the sidewalk width within the island and then have an opportunity to put more landscaping within the parking area. But again, the whole mindset here was, if you were required to plant 4 street trees in those islands, don't ask for relief. Ask, in essence, for the relief of the placement of them in those islands, push them to the perimeter, and that's what they've done. So they're not following a strict adherence to the dimensional requirements contained within the subdivision regulations. In essence, they're asking for more flexibility in the placement of the landscaping around the site. So hopefully that brings some clarity in a hopefully non-technical sense.
No, actually, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think that's an improvement.
You'll notice too on the staff parking area, these are evergreen trees that are mixed in, you know, on the perimeter of that, because the space is more, it's just closer to the resident. So to, you know, kind of create a better buffer, those are, you know, it'll be year-round screening as well.
Any additional comments or questions? Susan?
I'm not sure if this question is for you, but for the lighting that is in the parking lots, is that lighting on a timer? Is it on around the clock? Is it on all night? Do you know how it's, like right now, the high school parking lot is dark at night. Is this going to be lit all night long, or is it on a timer?
I don't know the exact details. We can find out, but it's not uncommon for them to be on a photocell and a timer so that they shut off at maybe 10 o'clock at night or something like that. I do not anticipate these lights being on 24 hours or all night long.
Thank you, and be sure to stamp the plans.
Yes.
I think the only thing I have left is a quick slide on the construction sequence, just to set the, okay, so this was prepared by our construction manager, and it just represents the beginning of the process. So the construction manager does intend to completely fence in their area with a scrimmed 6-foot-high fence. You see it run along School Street, across a new temporary road identified by those blue arrows. All right, that will be pick up and drop off, as well as the yellow arrow that is currently in front of the school along Columbia Street. So those are going to be the 2 points for pickup and drop off. Everyone is expected to be contained within the boundaries of this construction. That includes any contractor parking, obviously laydown area, as well as the actual activity itself. Construction is anticipated to move from west to east, and we are going to be in close proximity to the existing building while we are under construction. So we are working with the agencies to make sure everyone is comfortable with means of egress out of the building, etc. We are, to the best of our ability, trying to accommodate our neighbors with our laydown and construction parking, etc. But this is a very tight site. We're containing everything within these boundaries: parking, material, and the actual construction activity itself. So that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to
Questions on the timing for Mr. Conte? No? Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please come up to the mic and state your name for the record.
Hello, Andrew Martinez. I am a budding neighbor of the multi-phase project. First of all, I would like to say the notices that went out to us about this meeting, the headline comes across as this is a meeting about height variance. This seems to be the issue that's highlighted in the mailings that went out to us, that be aware the planning board is discussing or considering an application for a height variance. So, I would like in the future, these kind of, I wonder maybe more abutters would be here if they knew you were really talking about the entire comprehensive plan and not just discussing a height variance. So that's one question. Two, I've been, as an abutter, I've been attending the various meetings held by the planning committees through town, the school building committee and the different meetings, and this is the first I've heard of a white PVC fence. To claim that this has been discussed and shared with neighbors in the past, I don't believe that to be true. I texted my wife and checked with her, and she said no, that wasn't discussed at the meetings we've attended. Although I do appreciate the efforts to provide some kind of screen for the neighbors, that's well intended, and I do appreciate that. The white PVC stockade fence I see around town shows mold and mildew like crazy. I don't think it's a great aesthetic choice. I understand maybe wood is not affordable, but could we please find a tone that is more natural than stark white? That would be a request of mine. I'm curious if someone can answer the height of the building going to 61 feet on the existing structure that will be torn down. What is the highest point of the current high school building? Just for a point of comparison.
I'll let you ask all of your questions, and then we can...
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry? Okay, thank you. So I also notice on the plan, and on this slide, this would be the upper right corner, where in the northeast, where Kimball Street feeds into what will be the new lot there. Phil, if you want to go ahead and blow up.
Image.
Yeah,
Let me give
thank
you
you.
a better image here. Oh, it gets stuck on this one.
Okay.
There.
Okay. All right, so looking where it pours into Kimball Street, you'll see the yellow path that ends on the lower left and feeds into Kimball Street. So so that will not be open to vehicular traffic at the point of the entrance of the field. In one of your drawings, it looked like there was a sidewalk added going down Kimball Street. Is that true? No? Okay, thank you. And then I guess my last request is, as you consider student parking during the demolition phase, please don't allow for even a temporary period to have students parking in the neighborhoods on the streets. So if you're able to answer or address any of my questions, I guess my biggest one really is the stockade fence, which is new to me, and I am displeased with the aesthetic choice of white PVC.
Thank you. Mr. Conte, would you like to answer that?
So we did hear from several abutters about the need of screening and fencing, and although this is a minor detail, we also are not fans of the stark white fence. And for what it's worth, at least in this renderings, it's identified here as an earth tone tan. So I appreciate the comment that you would not have known that, but we did want to represent it in these renderings, that we are sensitive to the color and the comments we heard from other abutters for a solid fence.
And was that, the 80 feet, was that the correct answer?
I'm not, could repeat the, okay, then yes.
Susie?
So on the plans that we just received, it does say it's white. So does that need to be like, it's definitely not white, it's some other color that,
It's not white.
okay, because that's what, it is what it says in the plans.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If there are no members of the public who wish to speak, I'd like to go back to the planning board and see if there are any further thoughts or questions that have not yet been brought forward. Unusually quiet. Would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion from Joe. Do we have a second? Second from Peter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries. Jamie, we do not have any prepared
You do.
draft. And perhaps generally we take a 5-minute break 2 hours into our meeting, so perhaps we can have our 5-minute break and have an opportunity to actually read through the 5 pages. Everyone in agreement with that? Let's continue on. We have a memo from Mark Comboy, DPS, which is worthy of discussion. Has the applicant seen this letter?
Yes.
Okay. And then a draft motion that we have just read through. Mark, would you like to go through these things? It appears that some of them are requirements that need to be added. Some of them are just labeling, errors, additions.
That is correct. Most of them are minor issues. Invert elevations appear to be backwards. Some additional information such as pipe drain slopes aren't shown, so I can't fully evaluate if the flows through the pipes are going to work. Again, I'll go starting from number 1. We're looking for a construction sequencing plan. We haven't really seen a full one. We did receive an analysis of what appears to be the highest amount of impervious surface area during construction. And the analysis provided how much increase in runoff that would be. I agree with those numbers that they came up with, but I'm not exactly sure how they're going to take care of that additional runoff. Number 2, the supporting storm drain pipe sizing calculations should be provided. We want to make sure that, again, the pipes are going to flow correctly and they're not going to be surcharged. We're also looking for a long-term stormwater system operation and maintenance plan. The stormwater calculations did list one as one was made, but we haven't received a copy of it, and I'm sure DEM will be looking for that as well, that information. We're also looking for, number 4, traffic counts and a written traffic assessment to be provided to us for review. I spoke to Paul Banning just a few minutes ago, and he stated that that information is forthcoming. Number 5, we're looking for the top of the berm elevation for the southerly infiltration basin adjacent to Columbia Street. It should be labeled on the plans. It was just unclear as far as if there was actually a berm along that infiltration basin. And the northerly basin was labeled with a berm, so it should just be clarified. Number 6, there was 2 drainage manhole number 3s to avoid the problem. One of them just should be renumbered accordingly. Number 7, the northerly drainage manhole number 3 appears, the inverts appear to be incorrect. The invert out is higher than the invert in. Number 8, catch basin 14, the invert out will not drain properly to catch basin number 13 due to the inverts. I already listed number 9, storm drain pipe slopes need to be listed on the plans. Number 10, riprap should be provided at all flared end sections. The plans just weren't labeled to show that correctly. But there was a detail in the back of in one of the last set of plans showing riprap. Number 11, the limit of disturbance should be adjusted to account for the proposed 4-inch domestic water line and the 6-inch by 4-inch tap and sleeve and valve on School Street. That was a minor issue that is just showing additional work that's going to be done on School Street. Number 12, the isolator row construction details will be needed for the underground infiltration chamber systems. We need to see how that's actually going to be constructed to work properly. Usually for the infiltrator, for the isolator rows, the rows usually have to be set a little lower, or there has to be some sort of a diversion wear for that to operate properly. And I don't have any details showing that, so it's just a matter of providing a little more information. Number 13, Best Management Plan 2A infiltration system, chamber system has 2 isolator rows, but only 1 drain manhole. You're going to need at least each isolator row should require a separate drain manhole with a sump so that they can have access and maintenance to those, to both of those isolator rows. We're also looking for supporting documentation pertaining to the design infiltration rates established for all the BMPs. It's just backup information so we can make sure that it's right. And then the last item was that the stormwater management report should be signed and stamped by a licensed professional engineer. And that's all.
Thank you, Mark. So perhaps Mark and Jamie can also look at this list. Some of them are just labeling, some of them are information, some of them are requirements. It seems as though 1, 2, 3, 4, and 14 may be items that should be incorporated into a motion, or anything else that you have.
No, I'm sure that these could be worked into the plans at some point. I know that this information is forthcoming, so I do expect it to be done at some point.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Conte, you think that all of this can be provided fairly quickly?
Yes, yes, it will.
Good, thank you. Before we get to this draft motion, Jamie, can you just, for the benefit of the board and members of the public, explain the actual language that went out in the public notice? It seems that there may have been some confusion on that.
If you just bear with me one moment, Madam Chair, I have to pull that letter back up. So with regards to the abutters notice, I'll read the language so it's clear that on Thursday, May 29th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m., the South Kingstown Planning Board will conduct a public hearing in the council chambers at the South Kingstown Town Hall, 180 High Street, Wakefield, Rhode Island, to review the combined conceptual master plan and preliminary plan application for South Kingstown High School major land development project, proposing to demolish and construct a new high school with supporting fields and amenities. And there's a period after that sentence. So that clearly states the purpose of this meeting. Also required in the notice is any reference to waivers, which is the next sentence. This application is requesting a 26 height variance, 35 feet maximum allowed, 61 proposed from section 401's Schedule of Dimensional Regulations, located at 215 Columbia Street, Assessors Map 49-4, Lot 14, and 153 School Street, Assessors Map 57-1, Lot 209, Town of South Kingstown, applicant/owner. And again, there's a follow-up sentence regarding where the meeting's being held and the time and aspects there, but from staff's perspective, the notice is clear. It states the purpose of the hearing, and it states, as required, the relief that the applicant is requesting as it relates to height.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that clarifies the issue. So I'd like to hear comments from folks on the draft motion.
So, Madam
Joe?
Chair, if I just may,
Yes.
I've already included a few additional items which may address some of
Very
the
good.
comments you may have. So
All
if I
right.
can
Let's-
just go to those quickly, I would appreciate it.
Yep.
So just for clarity, item J and the findings of fact. Sorry. J. J as in Jamie. There was a reference there to 80-foot tall building in existence. That is a miscalculation. If you look at the old building plans, the elevation, I believe, is top elevation of the school is plus or minus 81 or 82 feet. And staff pulled that number off that elevation. They did not realize, though, the base elevation was plus or minus 40 feet. So the actual height of the existing school is plus or minus 41 to 42 feet. It's not 80. So we're recommending a change there to say 235,000 square foot plus or minus 40-foot tall building capacity, 1,200 students with a smaller 155 square foot, 61-foot tall building. So again, that's just clarity. The existing high school is not, in essence, 8 stories and 80 feet. So, moving down to conditions, under condition 2, we have A, B, C, and D, and I'll just read those to you. A is minor adjustments may be made to the final grading plan. I've added and stormwater plan based on field conditions that do not jeopardize the intent and or functionality of the site plans as voted on by the planning board upon review and approval by the administrative officer and consultation with the director of public service. New addition, the applicant shall also include a long-term maintenance plan for stormwater infrastructure and address the items contained in a letter from the town engineer dated May 29, 2025. So the attempt is to incorporate Mr. Comboy's letter into the board's actions, understanding that some of those are just simple changes to notes on the plans. Some require the submission of additional information, which the applicant has testified tonight is forthcoming. Item B, no changes. Item C, minor adjustments may be made to the parking lot layout and access drives if the adjustments do not jeopardize the intent and overall functionality of the approved site plans as voted on by the planning board upon review and approval by the administrative officer and consultation with the director of public service. I've added a sentence. The applicant shall submit supporting documentation to support the parking and circulation plan / layout. That is the reference to Mr. Banning supplying information with regards to traffic and parking analysis. Item D, minor adjustments may be made to the lighting plan as long as the adjustments are within the parameters and in keeping with the intent of the originally design. That is voted on by the planning board upon review and approval of the administrative officer in consultation with the director of public service. Understanding the lighting plan, foot candles and hot spots, I want to say there's nothing over the 3 range. Typical commercial parking lot is looking at 6 to 8, so they're almost a third of what you would typically see in a commercial setting. I've added a sentence there, and this is response to the conversations tonight. The applicant shall submit a management plan for the school year lighting, comma, evening lighting, comma, and non-school year lighting. So again, that would be an attempt to solidify whether they're managing it through a meter system on-off switch or how they may go about that. Those are the primary changes.
One suggestion that I would have that's somewhat related to your addition of a stormwater plan would be a sequencing and coordination for the landscaping, installation, and maintenance. This could be added either under 4A or as an addition to B.
What I've done, Madam Chair, is at the end of item B, which I had proposed no changes to originally, the applicant shall submit a phasing plan for the installation of plant material. Well, I'll say plant / landscape material.
Okay. And just to be clear, in this document, the term adjustments actually means adjustment, not the new legislative definition meaning a waiver.
Correct.
Additional thoughts? Joe?
Well, a couple things. I guess since the applicant didn't have any concerns with the items that were brought up by the town engineer, I would think that we could just incorporate Mark's letter as a condition of approval that the applicant meet the items contained in the town engineer's letter dated May 29th, 2025. So we just bring in the whole thing. And then the other thing is, I was thinking that it was more of an operation plan and a maintenance plan, however, whatever you want to call it, as far as the lighting goes. I'm sure that the design team gave a lot of thought into it, but it wasn't necessarily presented tonight. So having a operation plan, what lights go on, when, and when they go off, have it reviewed and approved by the administrative officer, with the administrative officer seeking the input from the South Kingstown Police Department early may help you with your wiring, electrical wiring diagrams on how you wire those lighting. So I'm not sure if you, again, I guess it was more of an operation plan to me, and also seeking the approval from the South Kingstown Police Department, since that may be a place where people gather, would like to gather in the evening.
So again, Madam Chair, if it's okay with the planning board members, under the administrative approval authority of the planning director, I had that sentence in consultation with the director of public service. I've added in the chief of police. And then to the next sentence, we had in there management plan. I've renamed that management/operational plan. And again, the item number B.A., there is a direct reference to the town engineer's letter dated May 29, 2025.
Any other thoughts? Susan?
Yeah. You just assume I have something to say? Okay, I've got two things. Earlier tonight, I had mentioned so there's on the plans, it offers a one-year guarantee for plant materials, and we never really resolved that. And so can we bump that up more? But then I don't know how that works, because it's the town's land, and so who would enforce the town to replant trees? How does it work if the town is the developer on guarantees for plant material?
So generally, financial guarantees that are put up would be to ensure that the developer would take care of the costs of any work that needed to be done, so that it wouldn't be public funds being spent. Not as applicable here, since no matter what happens, there's going to be public funds being spent. So, you know.
But does it make a difference if there's a 1 year or a 2 year on a town property? Like, what do we do if some of those magnolias are dead after a year? Like, does it make a difference how we word this?
We call Luke. But I think
Posting of a bond,
I think
not
the applicant's going to make a statement and a representative, and I think Kate's going to tell you that as they put things out the bid, they're going to require whoever's installing the landscaping to warranty it for a minimum of 1 year.
That is correct. It's Kate Turner with Left Field. Our construction manager, the bid documents that will be submitted to the landscapers will include a 1-year warranty. So it will be included within the cost of the plantings plan, that they warranty all of the plantings for 1 year. If we were to extend that warranty for another year, that would come at an additional cost for the project.
Thank you. I think that's why we wanted to see the maintenance plan, to ensure that the health and viability, with the investment in the landscaping. Anything?
I have one more. So I watched a town council meeting a couple weeks ago where you had some new architectural renderings with samples of building materials and things that were passed around. But this board hasn't seen your new architectural, like your exterior, the look of the buildings. We haven't seen that. But here on item 6, it says, as part of the final plan, the applicant shall submit final architectural plans, which plans shall be consistent with the architectural plans that we reviewed. But we haven't reviewed, I think, the newest version of the architectural plans. So I think 6 is kind of funny here, that we are approving the latest architectural plans.
Jamie?
I'll try and clarify that. The planning department is aware of the latest plans. Luke Murray has shared elevation of that. So the planning board's aware. I think the last rendering that you were shown, showed a tan or sand-colored building, which was different than the original kind of more traditional brick building that was shown as part of the bond issue. The design team has gone back to that more traditional brick color and earth tones and eliminated, I want to say 90% of any tan colors associated with the building. Perhaps Phil may have one or two things to add to that, but again, it's more in keeping with the original traditional brick type facade and not a sand or tan color.
I may respectfully
Just
contradict.
please restate your name.
Sure, Philip Conte, Studio Jade. The current design of the building does reflect more of the original design during the bond and referendum approach. We are moving to those darker earth tone colors that would blend with Hazard and the surrounding community. There are still highlights that gesture towards the tan color, but in general, it's dark and earth tone features of brick. There happen to be some just sitting on the table over here, just by happenstance. But we're looking to present the updated floor plans and color renderings at our June 5th community forum as well.
Thank you. But how does that work with the timing of us approving the plans that haven't been presented to us, or the color schemes that haven't been presented to us?
Yes. I was showing this image. This image is
Given them pretty much palette.
that's the palette. Yeah, those two images.
All right, Madam Chair, if you'll bear with me for a moment, we have kind of a, not the latest, very, very latest, but we have what was presented to the town in a meeting and also to the planning department. So we just need to switch screens.
It's the images that are on the website to represent the ballot. Fair representation of the ballot.
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to forward through these, and Phil Conti can potentially provide commentary because there are some slight modifications that he may be aware of. But again, as you see, the primary color palette is going back to the more traditional brick color versus the tan brick.
Before you continue, just a quick question for legal counsel, just to ensure regulatory compliance. We have closed the public hearing. Is this acceptable?
So from a legal perspective, as far as issues such as color scheme, that's really just for
Aesthetics?
information.
Yeah.
It's really for your information. You
Okay.
can't really control that. So since
Yep.
it's outside your jurisdiction, you can take a look at it, but that's the extent.
Thank you.
So again, this is one of the elevations on the town school website. And then back to the original.
Thoughts from board members?
Well, I have one more observation. I believe in reviewing the finding of fact on page 2, finding of fact J, during the public hearing, I think we discussed the fact that the existing building was 80 feet tall, and the finding of fact J clarified that the existing building is actually plus or minus 40 feet tall. So I'm a little bit concerned that during the public hearing, we had one discussion and we affirmed the 80-foot number after some discussion. And I'm also curious, the proposed building is smaller in terms of aggregate square footage, but it's going to be 60 feet tall. And I understand that part of that is a functional tower. But I know that you also you showed us that, I think it was the classroom part of the building, and I don't recall how high that was going to be. So I know the 61 foot is the actual tower, but I'm also concerned about having this discussion with the public hearing being closed.
So the reference to 80 feet, I think if I recall the dialogue, it was the member of the public asked for the height. I believe maybe it was Robin, you were looking at a draft of the decision and mentioned it. And then I think that was basically the extent of it. So I agree, it probably would have been better if that didn't occur, but the relevant numbers as far as what was you're considering tonight, and anything that was going to be commented on about the relief you're going to grant are the height that's allowed by ordinance and the height that's requested. So if you think they've made a showing to get the variance from the amount that's allowed by ordinance, you know, I guess the first statement is I don't think it causes a notice issue. I don't think you'd have to open the public hearing because those two numbers remain the same.
Okay, I would like to know, if I may, I mean, the 61 feet has to do with the tower, and I think the showing has been made for why that is wanted and desirable and appropriate. But I don't recall what the height on the classrooms was.
So the 3-story building has a 16-foot floor-to-floor, so it's 3 stories, 3 16s, I believe is...
I can do the math.
Okay, 3 16s, 48.
So there's 16-foot ceilings.
Well, floor-to-floor, so it's...
Floor. Yep. And
48.
What's the existing foot, if you happen to know? Floor to floor.
I do not know.
Okay.
We're missing our planning board architect this evening.
Yeah.
Question for legal counsel. The language contained in the conditions of approval 2A through D, where there's a reference to adjustments that do not jeopardize the intent and/or functionality of the site plans, is that acceptable so that we have a certain degree of flexibility without vague language that might become unenforceable at some future time?
I think that language works. So there's a reference, basically takes the language out of statute that allows minor changes to plans to be made and approved administratively. So this kind of gives clarity ahead of time of what could be considered a minor change. Obviously, anything that would contradict a condition that you put in the plan can't be a minor change. It would have to come back to you. But this just sort of lays out these areas could include minor changes.
Very good, thank you. Anything else? If there are no further comments, would someone like to make a motion to the amended draft motion?
I'll make that motion. I hope I can follow it.
You don't have to read it all, just...
The South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants the combined conceptual master plan and preliminary plan approval to the South Kingstown High School major land development application located at 215 Columbia and 153 School Street, Plat 49-4, Lot 14, Plat 57-1, Lot 209, Town of South Kingstown, applicant, owner. The approval is based upon the plan set entitled Major Land Development Site Review Plans for South Kingstown High School, assesses Plat 49-4, Lot 14, and assesses Plat 57-1. Lot 209, 215 Columbia Street, and 153 School Street, South Kingstown, Rhode Island, 02879, prepared for the Town of South Kingstown. South Kingstown School Department, 307 Curtis Corner Road, South Kingstown, Rhode Island, 02879, dated April 2025, with the revisions through May 20th, 2025. Said plan set contains a cover sheet, sheets G1, ECS1, and ECS2, C1 through C10, L100 through L103, and SL1 was prepared by the SLAM Cooperative, 1 Cedar Street, 201, Providence, Rhode Island. The approval is based on the following findings of fact and conditions of approval. Findings of fact A through Q with J. Okay, as amended. And the findings of fact waivers requested as amended, and conditions of approval as amended and discussed this evening.
Maybe say conditions of approval 1 through 7, just for clarity.
Conditions of approval 1 through 7. Was there any added based on our discussion on
He added
either
it.
Mark's letter, or was that added into the existing ones?
He added into the 2A.
Madam Chair, just 1 through 7.
Okay, 1 through 7, as amended. 8 was a placeholder, right?
Right, we did not add anything to that. That was any other conditions as deemed necessary. We have a motion from Joe. Do we have a second? Second from Peter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Nays. Motion carries. Thank you, folks. Our next agenda item is a major multi-household land development project request for extension of conceptual master plan approval, 571 Main Street. We have a letter dated May 1st, requesting requesting an extension to our, I believe it's August, is that correct, Jamie?
I believe so.
Scheduled for public hearing on June 24th, but I thought I remembered something, reading something about August. We just want to get the date straightened out. On the agenda, it says June 30th, but Jamie may have more information.
So the reinstatement date back in 2019, it's an August date. So I think that's what you're recalling, Madam Chair. They're just not coming in at the last moment.
So the motion should be Motion should be through June 30th or for some date in August, just want to be sure.
Should be, again, August 1st, 2026.
August 1st, okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Joe, do we have a second? Second from Peter, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries. Next agenda item, Major Land Development Project request for extension of combined.
May I just identify myself as
Sure.
attorney for the applicant?
Yep. You got to be quick around here.
I guess so. I totally missed it. So my name is Chris O'Connor. I'm an attorney at Blish and Kavanaugh. You're accustomed to seeing my colleague Matt Landry at these hearings. So
Yes.
it's his request for an extension of the master plan approvals. So I just want to be clear, though, when it's being extended to.
I believe we said August 1st.
Okay, so it's only a 30-day extension?
August 1st, 2026.
26, got it. Never mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item, Major Land Development Project request for extension of combined conceptual master and preliminary plan approval, Hampton Place. The applicant is requesting to extend the combined plan for approval for this 4-unit commercial development and associated site improvements, originally approved on May 12, 2015, with prior reinstatement and extensions granted. Most recent request extended through August 1, 2025, located at 4847 Tower Hill Road. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Peter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries. August 1st. 25.
26.
It says 25 on the agenda.
Is that on the motion?
We just did it to the 25th.
On the draft motion, it says 26.
Yeah, but
On the agenda, it says 25.
And when we teed it up for discussion, we said 25th.
Right.
We'd have to, we could make another motion, but so far it's the 25th.
Madam Chair, if the intent was to continue it to August 1st, 2026, I don't think it would be a notice issue, but because the wrong date is on the agenda, because these applications don't require public notice.
Madam Chair, if I can, I'll just clarify the agenda. The agenda states that the extension granted most recent request extended the application through August 1st, 2025. So that's the historic extension. You're granting it 1 year from that date. And that was the project memo for August 1st, 2026.
Yeah, I'm just reading off the corrected agenda that you gave us tonight. So, Peter, how should we handle this?
So if there was a motion to extend through the August 1st, 2025, I think whoever made that motion can withdraw it, and you can get a new motion to extend it through August 1st, 2026.
Peter? Joe, in agreement?
Sure, yes.
All right. New motion? Someone like to make it? Peter, extending to August 1, 2026? Second?
Second.
Second from Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, just for clarity, because Peter and Joe didn't have their mic on, there was a withdrawal of the motion that was made by Peter, seconded by Joe, to extend to August 1st, 2025. That motion carried. There was a second motion made by Peter, seconded by Joe Murphy, to extend to August 1st, 2026. That motion carried.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is a pre-application concept plan, 82 Main Street. As planning board members are well aware of, a pre-application meeting is not formal in nature, and it is intended to be an exchange of information between applicant and board members. Good evening.
My name is Nick Neal, owner of 82 Main Street. I think we're just looking to, kind of present our project, get a, just kind of first look at things. We are seeking 2 variance requests. The first would be a variance on the dimensional lot size. The current lot is 6,534 square feet. The town is requiring 11,200, so it's a variance of 4,666 square feet. The second variance is 6 parking spaces are required. We have the room for 5, so we're seeking relief for 1 spot. Currently, we are missing a few items in our submission. We're waiting on soil samples, drainage calcs, the DPS approval once we receive the flow calcs. We are also waiting on commitment from Veolia to service the property, and unfortunately, I don't have information on this, but I do believe that we are submitting as a minor land development rather than major due to maybe a recent change. But unfortunately, I don't have information as to why at the moment, but maybe someone could help if they do know.
So there has been a recent change to state law that defines what qualifies as a minor land development project versus a major land development project. So it must have been determined by staff that based on that change, it fits within the definition of a minor project.
But how fortunate that you've come in for pre-app regardless, so you can have that conversation with the board and get feedback early on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to add about the layout, the use, and so on?
Sure. So we're proposing in the structure the first floor to be office space for a construction company that's owned by myself and my brother Zach, who's also here. We're looking to use this space as predominantly offices, but we do have a storage garage facility as well. We had spoken with a few members of the town early on, and we do plan on storing anything regarding the construction business inside of the building. Nothing will be kept on the outside. That's the first floor layout. We then are looking to propose or 3 residential apartments, 2 on the second floor and 1 on the third floor. That's pretty much the layout.
And if I'm not, the second floor apartments would be 2 bedrooms and the third floor apartment would be a 3-bedroom?
Correct.
Are any of these affordable housing?
We did not plan on that.
And how many spots do you anticipate needing for the office use?
I think we were... I believe we were figuring 3 for the office space, assuming that each residential unit being zoned commercial downtown required 1 spot.
You have a total of, you're proposing a total of 5 spots with 3 apartments.
So we're looking for relief on 1 parking spot. So there's 5 currently, but we are looking for relief on 1 spot.
So you'd anticipate having 2 for commercial use and 1 for each apartment?
Yes. Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Yes.
And without the variance, you could only do, I'm not 100% clear, but without any zoning variance, they could build the commercial space and 2 apartments?
So just from the zone that it's in, they're allowed to reduce their parking requirements by 50%. So in essence, if they're providing 5 parking spaces on site, that accounts for 10 total. Because if 10 were required, they automatically get a 50% reduction because of the zone they're in. Because the zone they're in accounts for the ability to have on-street parking.
Well, now I'm totally confused. They're looking for a variance so that they can build 3 apartments and commercial space. They're also looking for a variance so that they can, instead of having 6 parking spots, they can have only 5. So my question, the first question is, if they were not granted a variance, what could they build in terms of, I assume they could build commercial space plus some amount of apartments, but it wouldn't be 3 apartments. What can they do as of right with no variance? On apartments, forget the parking for a minute.
The CD does allow commercial use on one floor and residential use on another.
Right, but I think they could only get 2 apartments. I'm not clear if they could get 1 apartment or 2 apartments.
So we were just discussing it now with the caveat that we'd have to go and look at all the numbers and make sure that, but from reviewing this presentation, I believe they could get 2 apartments based on a requirement of 5,000 square foot of a lot area per apartment. So they have enough for 2, they want to have 3, it requires a variance.
They have 6,000 plus. They're looking to virtually double their square footage.
They had 11,000, but
No, that's what they're.
That's what's required.
That's what's required in order to build what they want to build. Their proposed use requires 11,200 square feet of land area. The current lot is 6,534 square feet. So they want a variance of 4,666, and they want to reduce a parking spot by 1.
Correct.
And the proposed residential units are 2 2-bedroom apartments and 1 3-bedroom apartment.
Correct.
So I'm wondering where all these people are going to park their cars. Belmont's?
So if they file the variance request, these would be dimensional variances that would come in based on asking for relief from dimensional requirements, the parking and the lot size. There's certain standards that they'd have to go over as the board through a unified application. So to get, I think it's an extra apartment, but I won't commit to that now.
Right. I understand.
Assuming that that is what they're asking for, an extra apartment and fewer parking spaces, they'd have to show that there's a hardship, that they're relieving from that it comes from a unique characteristic of the lot, it's not a self-created hardship, that it doesn't alter the character of the surrounding area, and that it's a hardship that would amount to more than a mere inconvenience is the term that they use. So if there is a hardship that they would have to present to you that allows for a variance, they could request it. If you didn't think there was appropriate hardship, or if you felt that some of the other elements weren't met, such as not being consistent with the character of the surrounding area, there are various conditions they'd have to meet. If they didn't meet them, then it could get denied.
Okay, so just looking at the map of the surrounding area, it appeared to me, without doing an exact review, but it appeared that the lot size is somewhat smaller than the surrounding neighborhood, but I wouldn't anticipate, that's not a hardship that they created.
No, I don't think it is. I think that the main question that would probably be considered by the board, and it's okay to discuss this at the pre-app to give them an idea of what you might do. It doesn't mean exactly what they would do.
Right.
Is what's the hardship that requires you to get an additional, if it is an addition, one additional, that requires you to get one additional dwelling unit here? I think the lack of parking is probably just the fact that you can't get enough parking on that site if you had the 3 units. But they just have to give you a good enough reason, which they could attempt to do, for why there's a hardship that they need to have 3 as opposed to 2.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be clear, I think we're in our process of working through this. We developed the structure and felt like because we had the ability to move upward with the building, it's all fitting within the footprint. So that 3rd story, which would act as that single apartment, was really, more or less a bonus, kind of became a bonus, where it was like, we felt like we had the square footage based on the 1st and 2nd floor, so we had discussed this 3rd floor. And then that said, like you mentioned, the lot is small, and I think in our minds, the lot is small, we can only fit 5 spots, but, we grew up in the town, we know the area well. The street is flooded with parking, and it's never full. So I think you asked the question of where would people park. I think we, as the owners of the building and the company, who would also be the landlords of the tenants living there, we would do our best to give the parking solely to the tenants. And I think if it made sense to you for us to put something in writing where we could, allow them those spaces, I think we'd be happy to do that. And as myself and Zach and other members of our company came and went from the building, I would imagine we would just park on the street.
Madam Chair, now that I'm thinking about this application a little bit more, and it could be beneficial to talk about this with an attorney. You don't have to, obviously, but there's been a lot of changes to the law that could affect this. One thing that they may, and that the board may want to consider, is that now an accessory dwelling unit is allowed by right if it stays within the footprint of an existing structure or various different requirements. I don't think they meet the lot size for that here, but if they could keep it within an existing structure, say they build this structure with 2 units, the new law says that you can't deny an accessory dwelling unit based on the requirement for additional lot area. And you can have an accessory dwelling unit as part of a multifamily structure. So it could be that you would have a 2 residential unit structure and an accessory dwelling unit that is in there, whereas if you grant a variance for 3 dwelling units, you could put a 4th accessory dwelling unit potentially in the structure. So,
Do you know what the lot coverage percentage is?
What the building is taking up?
Yeah, what percentage of lot?
I don't think we have that yet.
Okay.
What's that? It's 6,000.
534.
Yeah. I would think it's probably. The footprint? Yeah.
Madam Chair, in round numbers, roughly the footprint, including the porches, is just under 2,000 square feet. The building envelope with the porch is 40 feet in, just over 40 feet in width, not including one bump out, and then another 46 feet in length front to back in the lot.
It's
Thoughtful
about
that you included a
40%.
porch.
What's that?
Thoughtful that you included a porch,
Mhm.
because it's kind of in keeping with the area.
Yep, that was our intention.
Yeah, no, I thought your design is very compatible with surrounding area.
Thank you.
That's funny, because I was going to suggest that you've got a Victorian on one side and a Victorian on the other, and a colonial across the street.
Mhm.
And for me, this modern farmhouse look with the metal roof and the batten board doesn't, not that I think you're going to build a 150-year-old colonial or Victorian out there, but to me, because it's so close to the road, I wish it had some more traditional elements that more blended in with that neighborhood.
Yeah, so, I mean, the image that you see on the cover page, which I do think is a little bit more of a modern look, I mean, no materials are decided yet on the exterior. And I mean, we'd be happy to, bring materials or make decisions on materials ahead of time. I don't think we have the intention to make it look ultra modern. It was just a, quick sketch.
Thank you. In fact, the Victorian to the left just did a whole, like a town-sponsored facelift, a glorious Victorian to the left. So I would like to see something sort of looking like it's been there a few years, not old, but
Sure.
more traditional. To me, it's really big for that lot. But I'd like to ask staff, because you have a commercial downtown district and you've got apartments on the upstairs floors, are there limits to uses or what can be stored or what can happen on that first floor? There's a garage down there and nondescript storage. Are there safety considerations or limits to what can be done on that first floor if you've got apartments upstairs?
Only what the state building code would require. There potentially could be fire separation or aspects associated with that, but that's a building code issue, not necessarily a zoning issue.
Robin?
Personally, I think it does look like you're trying to double the size of your lot, and I think that if every developer came with that kind of request, I don't think that would be appropriate. I also wanted to comment about the ADUs do have certain requirements, right? It has to be a relative. You have to live in the building yourself, so an ADU is not just necessarily another floor you can automatically put on, right?
So
That's being changed as we speak.
Yeah, it could change any day, but there are 3 requirements where it would be allowed by right. One is on a lot with 20,000 square feet, which this isn't. The other, as you mentioned, is for certain relatives, which I don't think would necessarily apply here, but the other is if it's within the footprint of an existing structure. So say a structure gets built on that lot, if it stays within this footprint and doesn't expand it, that's something both for applicants and the board to keep in mind.
Right, but again, you'd still have the requirements of who can live there. To call it at a...
Nope, that wouldn't be a requirement.
So,
Doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of what the accessory dwelling unit was?
You'd have to ask the people that drafted the law.
So, and I just to respond to what you're saying, I mean, what in your mind is a doable square footage? I mean, it's a 6,000 square foot lot, so I mean, we're trying to design based on the homes around it, but I think in a 6,000 square foot or 6,500 square foot lot, I mean, what would be in your mind an allowable size?
One that subscribes to our zoning?
Yeah, so I guess again, I'm just, we're here to figure out what the best course of action is. So I mean,
So just, and we've had multiple discussions with the applicant. They could simply remove a unit and have a five bedroom. It's going to be the same.
Right.
It's going to be literally identical to this. So they're trying to look at practical alternatives that address parking, scale, scope. We've had 2 other developers look at this site. One potentially would have been a comp permit. It wouldn't look nothing like this, and I think your opinion of it would be drastically different on scale, scope, and architecture under that comp permit. The other applicant was looking to do all residential with no kind of commercial or storefront space. We have an applicant we're trying to work with. They understand that they may need some dimensional relief and some flexibility with the planning board, but they're trying to put their best foot forward without, we'll use the term, manipulating the regulations. To Peter's point, they could build a 2-bedroom, 2-unit building. Show 1 unit with 2 bedrooms, show 1 unit with 5 bedrooms. Once that structure is built, they can take advantage of the law and instantly convert that 5-bedroom into a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. They're trying to be upfront with the planning board to get to an end result without, we'll use the term, doing a bait and switch before you by saying they're doing a 2-unit, 5-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and then 2 months later coming in, not before the planning board, to the zoning official and just simply converting the 5-bedroom to 2 units. So again, they're trying to, and again, we're appreciative of them coming in early in the process so that they can get feedback in any manner. Again, not attempting to discount anyone's opinion, it's just trying to lay out a path forward without them trying to, I don't want to use the term lie or misdirect you, but tell you what they would like to do on the property.
And
Well, I really don't see why we have these rules and regulations if they're so manipulable. I mean, why do I bother reading this and saying, wow, they need twice the amount of land to do what they want to do? Why don't you just plant something that fits there?
well, I think,
It kind of makes the whole point kind of silly.
In some aspects, Robin, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, to Peter Schwartz's point, the legislature has potentially made some changes that would allow them to do it differently. So.
and I think, you know, from our perspective as well, I think that to have a 3rd unit helps us to pay for this building over the course of time. Yeah, so, but you asked the question of why is it larger? So I think that's one of the answers that I would say is just that,
No,
you know,
I didn't ask it why it was larger. I know that you want to rent out to 3 different, because it makes more money. That part's clear to see. Like I said earlier, every time somebody wants special treatment, you're just increasing the density well beyond what our zoning is looking for.
I would like to acknowledge and thank you for pulling the building up closer to the street face and putting the parking around the back. That's been a goal for this board, to have more parts of town, you know, part of 108 and the whole Old Tower Hill Road, put that parking out back and pull the buildings up to the street face. So that's been a goal of ours. So thank you for taking the foresight to, oh, are you pointing to Jamie?
yeah, he had suggested that, yep.
Okay. And the other thing is that, and I have no power to ask this, but I hope that if you'll rent these out, you'll consider year-round rental opportunities for people in our, so Maria and I are going to say this together.
That's the plan.
Our town so badly needs year-round rentals. And so if that were, and we're not allowed to ask you, but that would be really, really great for us
That's
as a
our
town.
plan. Yep.
And I think we appreciate your design aesthetic mentality, and that, you know, you really have thought about it, and we'll continue to have conversations with staff and end up with something really nice.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Would that little retaining wall out front stay put? The one that runs down all the properties down the road?
We're hoping so, yep.
Just like how to go through it for your stairs? And
Yep. Yep.
Anything else from board members or staff?
I apologize, Madam Chair. We were just discussing that if you framed this request in a different way, right now they're asking for a dimensional relief from the lot size to put 3 units there. Instead, if they ask for dimensional relief from the requirement to have 20,000 square foot to have an ADU by right, they could still present it to you as basically the same project with 3 units. Call one of the units an ADU, get a dimensional variance to allow them to build it without, coming in after. And what that would do is, one, under the new state law, ADUs cannot be used for short-term rentals, so it would take it off the short-term rental market. And two, it would prevent another ADU being added on top for a 4th unit at some point in the future. So if you put it, it's basically the same application, put it in a different box, it might be more palatable to the board.
Good legal advice.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our final agenda item this evening, incorrectly written at the beginning of the agenda, which says public hearing, but there's an asterisk on the corrected agenda that said closed on April 22nd, 2025. Major subdivision and comprehensive permit, preliminary plan. We have a draft motion in our packet. Assuming everyone has digested this thoroughly since it arrived in the packet, so comments would be appreciated. I do have something, a suggestion for the board. So as everyone knows, and I have been part of the review of this project since its initial debut back in whenever it was. Jamie has the date. The location, this site is at the kind of juxtaposition of a major university and 2 schools. It's a high-traffic area, and although the applicant had a traffic engineer and stated that there wouldn't be any change in level of service, the project does have due to site constraints, a considerable amount of curb cuts along Old North Road. They do not have an internal. Are you giving us a different? So they were unable to design in an internal road, thus eliminating the need for curb cuts. And without saying that this or any one specific project will add to the traffic volume, as someone who has lived in the area for more than 20 years, has run along that road for a long time, I would like to see something added to the condition whereby the town will make their best efforts to increase traffic enforcement and consider some kind of a traffic assessment, which I think is reasonably vague in nature, but also speaks to the issue that we know from local experience and from the many folks who've come to our public hearings. I feel that the town should make an effort to do those things. I don't know what the best way to word it would be, but open to thoughts from Mark and Peter?
So I was just talking with Jamie, and as the board probably knows, Madam Chair, that you can't enforce that type of finding. It would ultimately be up to the police department and the town council, but you could put it in there as sort of a non-binding statement of what the position, the board's position is as to what the town should do in that area in light of the new development there. But it wouldn't be binding on the applicant, obviously, they would.
No, of course, it's not
And it couldn't force the town.
It's just
So if you wanted to
out of
put the
regard for the community and the, we have a traffic and circulation element in our comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you put it maybe in the finding sections rather than the condition section to make clear that it's not a binding condition of approval, and just say, look, we think that the town, based on this development, should take further actions to enforce the town's traffic laws and ensure public safety out there. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
Okay. Anything else? And is everyone in agreement with that?
I'm not in disagreement with the intent. I'm just wondering if this is the best mechanism. It really doesn't fall on the applicant at all.
No.
And we're putting a condition, well, it's not even a real condition, but we're putting it back on the town without necessarily speaking to the people that would be involved. It almost seems like it's better, and I recognize the intent, but I'm almost wondering if we should just instead have a follow-up letter from the board to the town that just, we approved this, however, please note that these are our concerns and we think that the town should address it. I just don't see it falling in the paperwork for the approval for an applicant.
Peter?
You could do that too. You could do that too. There's only going to be a limited set of people that read the decision. It would be people that are interested in
That's a good point.
purchasing the property, so it may be that you get more attention if you send a letter.
Well, that might be more impactful, actually, and then it would go to the town council, who wouldn't necessarily read this, as well as to DPS. How do folks feel about that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just add on to what Peter said, that if you put it in the findings, I think to Joe's point, it may be an expectation that something's going to occur versus saying, please be aware there's increased development proposed for Old North Road in a letter format by the planning board at some point in the future.
And it's also about, again, not pointing to any one specific project, but its cumulative impact. And you don't want to get to the point that you're ignoring something for such a long time and then try to fix it later on. So are folks in agreement with the letter, and Jamie could write the letter and have it for us?
Do we get to read it next time or something?
We can.
Yeah. I want to read it.
Work session or next meeting, whatever works with your schedule.
Will
It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
5 pages, Jamie.
That's hard for a planner to do.
I know.
Brian, right, he'll do it in 1 page. I think we could do that in the next 2 to 4 weeks for you.
Great. All right, anything else on this motion? Would someone like to make the motion that?
Madam Chair, are there any questions on the revisions?
We have not all, I need to
If
look at
I
them.
can walk you through those, if
That
you
would
would
be great,
prefer.
whatever changes you've made,
Okay.
that would be great if you could
On
just.
page 3 of 7,
I see it.
Item K.
Yep.
It's just clarifying the waiver request, aside from the relief referenced above and the conditions referenced in number 24 that may have a minimal effect on the lot area, and in a September 11, 2023 letter from Joelle Rocha. Again, it's clarity that there was some additional discussions on dimensional relief. Doesn't affect the layout of the project, but it was referenced in a September 11, 2023 letter, and we're in concurrence with that. I spoke to both Joelle and Peter regarding that. Again, it doesn't change the aspects of what you've seen as a project. On the next page, item 5A, that the size of the market rate units and affordable units shall be similar in scale, similar architectural styles, comparable materials, i.e. quality and composition, and the designs as shown on the architectural plans provided in the affordable units will be no less than 80% of the size of the market rate units as shown as the proposed concept plans. Item 20, and I think you discussed this with the high school, that the proposed landscape materials shall be warranted for a period of 1 year, and the trees shall be warranted for 2.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
On page 6 of 7, at the top, it's just clarifying that the open space, in essence, is accessible or able to be utilized and part of all 39 lots. And also that in the HOA language, there will be a discussion and/or plan for how that area will be managed. In essence, what happens in a storm event, who has the rights to go and clear deadfall, who has the rights to potentially, these are agreements that exist forever. 80, 90 years from now, is there an area that may need to be thinned out? How do you discuss that? In item 28, it is just a statement with regards to, prior to the issuance of the CO, that there's clarification that the appropriate stormwater management features and as-built for those features have been made available to the town. And then on the individual lot development, things associated with rain gardens, gutter and below grade stormwater management. I think the commission's used to seeing the subdivision plans where we have generic boxes on the plans. And as we get individual site development, those boxes move around the property, and we just want to be clear that we're aware of the infrastructure that's going in the ground, and those are the items. And again, under the new law, if I misspeak, council will correct me, but the applicant is allowed to weigh in on the motions. We have had discussions with the applicant's legal counsel, and I'm not sure there's anything she would like to add, but I think they were in support of the revisions.
And I just want to clarify, so on condition of approval 22 on page 5, I know that we had discussions about monumentation, but there's no specific here, unless I'm missing something, because it's,
What they've
4 to
deferred
10.
to and added in subsequent language to the department is utilizing what the subdivision regulations require, which is the
Usually
typical
choice.
post and markers. I think as we move forward, we'll continue that's what's required by the regulations. I think we'll continue to discuss, if you're doing 10 in a row and they all have line of sight, that perhaps one is a little more permanent than a pressure-treated post.
Mhm.
But again, that would be potentially beyond the regulatory scope.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? We have a motion that begins on page 1 out of 7. If someone would like to make that motion.
There it is. South Kingston Planning Board hereby grants preliminary plan approval to the Fieldstone Farms, a 39-lot major subdivision submitted as a comprehensive permit for single-family development, with 29 of these units being market rate housing units and 10 being deed restricted low and moderate income housing units, located at the intersection of Old North Road and Stony Fort Road. Old North Road Land Investment LLC, owner applicant. This approval is based upon a plan set, preliminary plan submission, Fieldstone Farm, South Kingston, Rhode Island, Assessor's Plat 16-4, Lot 9, completed by Deprete Engineering, Inc., 2 Stafford Court, Cranston, Rhode Island, 02920, which includes landscape plans prepared by John Carter, Inc., in addition to plans referenced in this motion. 2 additional plans that were submitted as Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3, and are referenced in a letter from Joel Rocha, Esquire, to Planning Board dated April 9th, 2025, shall be considered incorporated into the latest revision plan set, i.e., I don't know what that word is, Sistine, location Old North Road, stopping distance, inset, open space, disposition, and Old North Road pedestrian walkway. Sheets, does that need to be talked about? No. Finding of facts A through H, and then findings of facts requested relief J through K. Conditions of approval 1 through 29.
We have a motion from Peter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Nays? Motion carries. Thank you. We need a volunteer for the TRC. It's June 11th, Wednesday.
No, it's a Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday?
It says Tuesday.
If we have that wrong on the agenda, the meeting is scheduled for Wednesday morning.
Is that the same week as the Congress?
Congress for New
Yes,
Urbanism Open
it
Day.
is.
I've signed up for it.
It is. So again, we're asking alternative staff to chair that meeting. And right now, we do not have any agenda items for that meeting, so there's a possibility it's canceled. And we literally, within 7 days from today, we'll know whether we're having that meeting. Okay.
All right. And is it acceptable, Peter, that we didn't have a motion to direct staff to write the letter to the council and anyone else who might listen on the...
That's okay, you can just draft it and you can vote to send it or not
Sounds
send it.
good.
when it-
Motion to adjourn? Motion, second from Peter. All those in favor say aye. Aye, motion carries.